welcome. Today I'm gonna show you something really special and something I'm really enjoying doing at the moment, and that is our favorite, or my favorite, macadamia cheese recipe, which I love making in advance on my day off. First fermenting and then storing it in the fridge and having delicious plant-based cheese on tap. These are macadamia nuts and Brazil nuts in shell. We found them in supermarket because it's Christmas time now and people like nuts in shells over Christmas. I don't know why, but they do. The nuts are really good in these shells because number one, it is the first step of reconnecting ourselves to the food cycle and to the food source, and to actually knowing and understanding where the food comes from and how it looks like. So the more unprocessed the food we get, the more we can understand where it comes from, and the more we can reconnect to the food cycle and to nature and to ourselves. And second of all, from a nutritional perspective and health perspective, nuts and shells are the best nuts because they are protected from oxidization inside the shell. They're super fresh, and the oils inside the nuts are not rancid because they only get rancid and old when the shell is cracked and the nuts are exposed to oxygen and transportation and temperature differences, light and sunshine, and all these things affect the way the nuts taste and their nutritional properties and the amount of nutrients available in the nuts. So nuts and shells is a novelty. It's not something that we do every day, but I'd rather have this novelty of nuts in shells than have the novelty of any kind of meat or dairy products. So nuts and shells all the way. For the ease of the recipe, we still use pre-cracked nuts, pre-opened nuts. Today I'm going to show you how to make macadamia and Brazil nut cheese, just because I found a cup of macadamia nuts and a cup of Brazil nuts, and I usually use 2 cups of nuts, so I thought I'm gonna make a mix. You can use either just macadamia nuts or Brazil nuts or any kind of nut. The oilier the nut, the better, because the cheese comes out a lot silkier, smoother, creamier, fatter, you know, the way the cheese is supposed to be. Yum. The first step is we pre-soak the nuts. So that's a cup of macadamia nuts and a cup of Brazil nut, pre-soaked in spring water. Best is overnight. We pre-soaked it for a couple of hours, and we're gonna drain that water. First trick to making a great cheese is to have a high-speed blender, gadget like a NutriBullet, Vitamix. You can try and do it in a food processor, although it'll take a lot more time and it'll be a lot more strenuous for a food processor. So the better your blender is, the more likely you're gonna make a delicious smooth cheese without breaking your blender. So the first step is to blend the nuts with the least amount of water possible. So you want your cheese as thick as possible while still allowing the blades to spin. So we're gonna use half a cup to a cup of spring water. So that's a cup. I'm not adding anything else at this stage, just water and nuts. And I'm gonna first try and make a really thick, creamy puree of the nuts and water, and then I'm gonna add extra flavorings. Okay, so we're blending. That's how smooth you want your nut puree. Obviously, do not overheat the nuts. If you feel that the contents of the blender are going too hot, keep it under 42 degrees. So now that we made amazingly smooth puree of nuts, we're gonna add a bit of flavoring. Here's the deal. We're gonna ferment this cheese with some extra probiotics added, and there's 2 ways of doing it. So I usually like adding a bit of flavor to start with, so that I have like my base cheese already flavored. And then I add probiotics, which further add additional flavor to the cheese. And then if I choose to, I can add even more flavoring afterwards once the cheese is already fermented. This is gonna add some extra zinginess and sourness to the cheese, and also helps to preserve the cheese. And vitamin C. And for me personally, anything sour goes really well with really fatty stuff. I like adding lemon. The clove of garlic. So the cheese is not going to be too garlicky, but it's going to have a background flavor. Big pinch of salt, unprocessed sea salt, onion powder. My favorite secret ingredient in raw food cuisine is onion powder, especially in cheese making. It gives this amazing natural cheesy flavor. It's a great ingredient to use for anything cheesy. Teaspoon of turmeric powder, because I want my cheese to come out quite yellow, and turmeric has preservative properties, and it's also known as a natural antibiotic and antibacterial, antifungal, etc., etc. It's a great medicinal herb to add to everyday food, and in this case it gives an amazing color to cheese. I'll add a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Amazing. So good. Okay. I made quite a big quantity of cheese. Nut cheese, as you can imagine, is pretty filling. It's super nutrient dense. We're not meant to eat above, let's say, a handful of nuts each day. So this is a big portion for definitely more than one person. And I like fermenting it and then putting it in the fridge. And it usually keeps for a week up to 2 weeks, and I just add it to any kind of dish I'm eating, or spreading it on a piece of cracker or a vegetable, anything like that. Okay, so I'm gonna scoop out the cheese into a clean container. Let me tell you guys about the fermentation process. We're gonna ferment this cheese using extra added probiotics. Any kind of probiotic powder or capsule open, it would work fine. Health Force probiotics from America. These are soil-based. We've got higher nature probiotics, which are readily available here in UK. White powder, so it's quite easy to use. For this amount of cheese, I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of probiotic powder and give it a good stir. This is a ready-made jar of macadamia and Brazil nut cheese, and now I'm gonna ferment it overnight outside in an ambient temperature, so you can leave it on a surface in your kitchen or inside your cupboard to ferment for up to 24 hours. And you can taste it in 24 hours and see if you like the flavor and the level of sourness that your cheese naturally has achieved due to probiotic processes. And once you're happy with the level of sourness of a cheese, just stick it in the fridge, and that will stop the fermentation process, and you'll always have this amazing smooth cheesy cream cheese in your fridge on tap, totally plant-based, totally amazing, totally probiotic, and totally good for you. Yeah. So if you like this video, share it with your friends, share the probiotic magic with your friends, share the plant-based cheese magic with your friends. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you next time.